People who rent out their houses for Airbnb. What is the rudest, most fucked up thing a guest has done in your home? Not me, but my sister. She was visiting her boyfriend who lived in France at the time, and figured it was a good idea to put her apartment on Airbnb. There were 2 guys that ended up renting it for 9 days of the 3-ish weeks she would be gone. Day 2 she got complaints from neighbors about garbage being thrown out the window. She lives on the 5th floor. She tried getting them to stop. When that didn't work, she tried getting them to leave. Didn't work either. OFC. She ended up calling our parents to get them to help with calling the police as she was still in another country. When the officer showed up, they spit in his face and tried punching him. He got reinforcements and got them removed. IDK what happened to them afterwards, sadly. As a side note, Airbnb was surprisingly helpful, and even handled all the legal things with the guys still paying for the full 9-day stay, without more than a quick call to describe what was happening. Had a guest from Nick stay in our VRBO app for a week. She was a bit snooty and bragged that she was coming to sell high-end seafood to high-end restaurants. She asked me to make sure and accept a large package of frozen seafood that was being overnighted to the house prior to her arrival. I didn't put it in her apartment. She arrived and we didn't see her until the day she left. She told all went well and she got several new clients. Then she presented us with a huge fillet of tuna as a gift. Once she left, we went into the units to start cleaning and prepping for new guests arriving a few days later. The place was filthy. She threw her trash on the floor rather than in the trash cans. All of the washcloths were missing from the linen closet, but none were in the laundry pile. I found 3 bloody washcloths under a paper towel in the bathroom trash. It was the only thing in it. There was this bad smell and we couldn't figure out where it was coming from. After a thorough search, we found it. She had been broiling seafood in the oven. That new oven was disgusting. The inside was caked in grease, fish scales and God knows what else. It took me one entire afternoon to get it clean. First time was my last time. But rented to a young lady and her 5-year-old son. Was supposed to be an overnight, then she would return in a week for a second night. We met the lady and her son. Showed her around. She told us she would likely be gone by noon at the latest. Wife and I showed up at house around 1:30 to clean up. Her car was still in the driveway. We knocked on the door. The little boy answers. Tells us his mommy won't wake up. We found her lying on the floor next to the bed. Apparently she had a heart attack in the night and tried to get to her cell phone. The cops contacted her family. They came and got the little boy. Lots of tears and emotion. Wife and I decided that we didn't want that ever again. So we took it off the site. When I used to work for Air B&b, my job was to meet hosts and talk to them in person about their experience. One guy told me how some dude locked himself in the room he was renting and wouldn't come out for days. The host eventually called the cops to have the guy removed because he overstayed his visit and wasn't opening the door. When he finally was removed, the host found feathers everywhere. He couldn't figure out where they were coming from until he opened the closet door and saw blood and more feathers smeared all over the wall. Dude had been practicing voodoo or Santeria or something in the closet. Sacrificing chickens. I had family that put up their second place as Air B&b. They were pretty remote, so they catered mainly to families and groups. They recently stopped doing bachelor and bachelorettes as they've noticed they get too wild and they always leave the place a mess for checkout. One time a woman brought their tiny dog to a bachelorette party. Which is fine, they're dog friendly. But the owner had passed out early and no one let the dog out, so it just pissed and shit all over the hardwood and no one cleaned it up before leaving. They got charged extra. But the thing is with Air B&b, this isn't a hotel where staff don't care personally and one mess out of 100 rooms isn't necessarily a significant deal. This is someone's house. My sister rents out a unit that's attached to 2 other units. She told me about a guy who was a first-time renter on the app. He seemed nice enough, but she got complaints from the neighbors about partying and loud music late at night. She spoke to him the next day. He was super chill about it. But when he left, she found a mess. Beer cans and food everywhere, and on top of that he spilled beer all over the mattress, so she had to get a new one. She charged him for it and wasn't sure if he was gonna pay up. But he did. Wasn't super bad. But it was incredibly stressful for her. I've had people on my Snap who used to rent B&Bs. And all they would do is get drunk, smoke weed, and destroy the place. For some reason the guy posted a message from one of the owners saying how horrible of a guest he was and that everything was ruined, and all he did was laugh at it. Not Airbnb but a competitor. A handful of college students rented my parents' sauce vacation house for spring break. My parents made sure they knew it was in an uppity residential neighborhood and wild spring break parties wouldn't not fly. They rented it anyway. Said 6 people were going. Somehow like 50 people showed up. The police got called due to the noise. Cleaning guy reported a missing widescreen TV. A front and backyard full of beer cans and red Solo cups and other kinds of trash. A broken bed. And all 3 toilets were overflowing. We rent apartments in our house. We live upstairs. It's a pretty big house, so there isn't any privacy issue. One night, my mom and I fell asleep watching the TV, nothing unusual. At 6 AM I am woken up by a dude, guest. CCA 20 yo, just standing in the middle of the living room. Completely freaked out, I just say mom. She turns also completely shook. Dude is still just standing. Finally he tells us their taxi never showed up and they are late to the bus station. Mom tells him to go back to the app and she'll drive them in 5 minutes. So it was quite innocent. But shit man. How do you even think of coming into someone's house like that? From then on, we made sure to double check every night if all the doors are locked. A friend of mine rented out his condo to a family for 3 months solid. When the rental period was up, they refused to leave and he had to call the police out to get them to go. Then he found out they had ruined the flooring in the kitchen by keeping a dog water bowl on the floor and letting water just get trapped under it until it soaked, and day after day, week after week. He said the kitchen looked like they'd been running a commercial restaurant because there was no way normal family meals could have accounted for the amount of grease and curry staining the walls. They'd also left rotting food on the counters that had maggots crawling on it. The kicker was he filed a complaint with Air B&b demanding a full refund of his 3 months rent because he wasn't happy with the rental. My parents rent out their villa in mainland Europe to friends and family. Mum's beginning to rethink after coming back and finding all her forks in the outside flower bed. The dishwasher broken as it's full of fish bones. Missing bedsheets and towels. Broken decorations. Broken crockery and glasses. Missing items that we've had since childhood. Sometimes her childhood. Much more, but I can't remember right now. They charge a really low relative amount and no deposit. So maybe they're asking for it. But last time she was out, she was almost in tears about it all. She doesn't know who's done it, but isn't keen on letting it out anymore. Particularly as fixing the dishwasher cost almost as much as a week's stay. And X200B. As someone said above, some guests seem to not realize it's someone's home, not just an impersonal hotel. My girlfriend and I went backpacking through South America for 3 weeks over the summer, and we Airbnb'd our apartment to a super nice Greek couple. I guess in Greece their plumbing system isn't that great, so they weren't accustomed to flushing toilet paper down the drain. The smell hit us the second we walked through the door, and we just ended up throwing away the bathroom trash can and all its contents. I wouldn't necessarily call it rude fucked up, but just one of those weird cultural differences. I can't get into specifics, but my job had to step out of a file where we had booked an Airbnb for someone. This lady went from the usual terrible person behavior, trashing the property, letting her animals and kids run the place into ruin, to full-on single white female. She started impersonating the owner to install new security equipment, file renovations with the city, basically trying to get everything involving this property under her name. Last I heard before we cut our ties, she was inviting her entire family to move in so someone would be there at all times to chase the owner off every time they came by to talk or assess things. I feel so bad for that owner, and I hope she finally took legal action to get her life back. not a host, but previously worked as a case manager. Host contacted us about a disgusting scenario. Guest invited his squad, though he only rented for himself. Left without notice. Shit was smeared on the bathroom door. Cocaine lines were on the kitchen counter. Sofa was split in half, and the worst of all, refrigerator was missing. Guest deactivated his account and can't be reached from our side. Had to escalate to the legal department as the police were involved. I haven't rented a house out, but I stayed at an Airbnb and there wasn't a key in the lockbox. The owners didn't live in it, just rented it out. So we called the owners AMD. Apparently the people that stayed before us had completely trashed the place. Like things thrown everywhere. Floors almost ruined. Green beans were all over the floor and looked like they had tried to stomp some down the drain of the bathtub. Left behind drug paraphernalia and empty bottles all over the place. And apparently took the key with them. The owners lived an hour away and said they were working on it all the way up till midnight of the day before we arrived. Drove back home. Then had to come back to bring us a key. They showed us pictures when they came and bought us lunch for the inconvenience. And gave us 2 free nights. Which was really nice of them. But that just seemed real shitty of someone to do. This place was super reasonably priced for the location and all it had to offer, and people like that should really be ashamed of themselves. Not an Airbnb. But my parents used to own a regular B&B in the mountains where they rented out all kinds of equipment like snowmobiles, ski ice, fly fishing poles, and the like to guests. One winter a large group of guests took out all 6 of the snowmobiles. After the majority of the group had driven off, one guy realized he needed to use the bathroom or something, so he ran inside, leaving the machine running idle in the yard. Now, snowmobiles aren't supposed to just sit there running because they use the freezing outside air to cool the engine. You can probably guess what happened next. The snowmobile's engine melted into an unusable pile of scrap. My parents were understandably upset and asked the guest, who had signed releases and other papers, to pay for a new machine. The guest flatly refused and forced my family to take him to court to get the money. He proceeded to write bad reviews about the B&B on every website he could find. It was a mess. I rented out a 5-bedroom home for a family vacation. My sister wanted to invite her BFF and I said no problem, but she is sleeping either with you or on the floor. Her friend ended up stealing, of all things, the pillows, and I didn't find out until I was charged for 3 pillows. Pissed me off. Made us seem like some low-life thieves. Next door neighbor Airbnbs their place on weekends while they're out in the countryside. Fortunately I'm a deep sleeper, so my partner heard all the drama. Apparently there was a male and female arguing with each other very loudly, and there was some door slamming out in the hallway and balcony. Mind you, this went from 3 AM right through to sunrise. Texted the neighbors to let them know. 4 days later found out that a whole bunch of stuff was stolen. There was white cleaning powder all over the apartment, and that the male who Airbnb'd the place had bought a lady of the night in, which we assume was the female voice. They called the police. We didn't have to give a statement and don't really know what the result of it was. I work for a vacation rental agency who works closely with Airbnb. I had a sweet old homeowner call in and explain how her house was dirtier than normal but thought it was just due to the younger guests. Nothing crazy, and she was so nice about the whole thing. Then she mentioned that after further inspection she realized they had moved a large painting above one of the beds, which she thought was quirky. Turns out there was a person-sized hole hidden behind that painting. They had fallen through and tried to cover it up in the most comical way possible. You hear a lot of crazy stories when you're the one the guest's owners call. We have a room available on Airbnb. My first guest was this late 40s Southie Muslim woman who loved Trump because he was honest and cleaning the swamp and wouldn't stop telling me how evil my government was, Canada, and that all women in Canada have been raped, including my wife, who must have Stockholm Syndrome, and that she was hoping to renounce her Canadian citizenship because of too many illegals coming here ruining the place. She was an immigrant herself. Oh, and our healthcare system is horrendously broken. Not like her home country of Pakistan. I still can't believe she was a real person. A living, breathing human. Not some edgy YouTube comment. She was real. and she was insane. No more instabooking after that. Not me, but someone who stayed the same place I did. I visited another country and had fallen ill on my way to the place. When I got there they said I would have to get cleared before staying. This is why. A previous person had come with their sibling from another country. They were both doctors who worked with viruses. One of them fell terribly ill. No one knew until he had to be taken into emergency care and had left coughed up blood all over the room. They had to kick everyone out and quarantine the place. Clean it like a hospital. They lost thousands of dollars over this. So when I showed up with a cold they were understandably paranoid. I don't rent out Air B&b, but I do clean for some of the properties. The places I clean are 3 stories and take at least 4-5 hours to clean. If these are left in good shape. I live in a city though. Which means people come from out of town to have bachelorette parties. One bachelor party group peed behind the washer into a bottle along with dumping detergent all over the floor. I also found a bottle of pee under one of the beds. One of the showers had pike all over it. There was tobacco spit all over a bunch of the sheets. And there was so much body fluid to clean that I thought about quitting on the spot. They completely trashed the place. And I got yelled at for not cleaning it up fast enough. I need a new job. Okay. So we never rented it out as an Airbnb. But we did rent out my grandfather's house after he had passed away. The house was essentially split between my mother and my uncle and neither of them lived anywhere near the state the house was located in. To make matters worse, my mother was very sick with cancer. So she was unable to travel. My uncle rented the house out to a family that he felt sorry for. There were all sorts of issues with them paying the rent on time. We finally got them to leave and I went to go look at the house. I have never seen such filth and disrespect for someone else's property. They let their kids draw with crayons all over the wall. Several outlet covers were missing. The carpet was filthy and needed to be replaced. The master bathroom shower was disgusting and they had somehow managed to burn something in the fireplace that had left soot all over the mantle. The place was thoroughly trashed. My aunt and uncle bought out my mom's half to live in the house after they retired and it took them over a year to get everything right. We rented our house to 2 dudes because there was a music festival in our town. They arrived. They were something like 20. We gave the keys. Explained 2 or 3 things about a little malfunction in the garage door, etc. And then we left. When we came back, 2 days later, they were still in the house. They were supposed to leave 2 hours before. But we didn't knew it. So I went to check the rooms and when I opened the door of our bedroom, I see this 2 guys having sex with 1 whore each. I told them to get the fuck out of there. They stopped, looked at me, and continued. I literally had to throw a cup of water at them to make them stop. They left. And there was semen all over our bed. Story time. One time a couple of college kids rented out the B&b. Now it's a pretty spacious place with a lot of amenities and has some long-term renters underneath that are wonderful but want reasonable noise hours, midnight. So I'll let them in and head out for the night. I get back around 1:30 AM and hear what sounded like a death metal mariachi band and 9 extra cars in the parking lot. And loud beer pong level yelling. I try to message them. Then call. I try knocking on the door. Get nothing. Go around back and knock. Nothing. I really didn't want to call cops because hey, no one wants that. Suddenly the entire place becomes deathly quiet all at once. And I marvel as 20 people quickly come out and pack into the cars and leave. I did tell them noise hours beforehand. But I still kinda feel bad for everyone involved. That day was the day the house rules went online instead of just giving them a verbal overview. TLDR. College death metal mariachi becomes the reason the house rules exist. I tried this when I went on holiday. When I came back the guy wouldn't leave. He had changed the locks. Had to get the police and a locksmith to help me get him out. When I got in he had taken a sledgehammer and smashed the bathroom, kitchen, made holes in internal walls, left a shit on the bed and a large pile of old porn mags in the lounge. I'm never doing it again. The place was totally destroyed. I will never understand how someone can do that to someone else's home. Not a host, but a previous guest to my first Airbnb experience. While this was a total accident, I still feel terrible about it and helpless. My family was getting together there to celebrate my great-grandmother's 90th birthday. And 7 of us were staying there overnight. Me, mother, uncle, grandmother were staying because we were from way down the state. And my great-grandmother, great-aunt, and great-uncle were staying from out of state. The house was beautiful and almost like a dream. We soon realized the owners must have had a cat, because we found a litter box in one of the bathrooms. I personally never saw the cat, and we did not see it at all since we arrived on the first afternoon. And we had looked everywhere we could. We eventually had to assume that the hosts had the cat with them. In the middle of the night, however, the cat made little noises under one of the beds, alerting my mom at least that the cat was in fact there. Some of the others walked outside for air, not knowing about the cat being there after all. And it ran downstairs and slipped by as they were exiting or entering the door. Everyone at once tried to look for a sign of where it could have gone. For hours. And then the next day we looked. Until we eventually had to leave for the party of my great-grandmother's at another relative's residences. And when we got back, we looked again. On and on until our time there was up. To my knowledge, we never found the cat. And I feel so awful, because I would hate for that to happen with one of my own pets. We notified the proper people, and I truly hope that the cat came back. The owners found them. Not Airbnb, but a renter. I currently live in a house that was built in 1911. That's almost 11 decades this house has been standing. Built by my great-great-grandfather. My grandma, who rented out the house before giving it to us, had a rule that you couldn't smoke. Period. I think she just fined them extra if they did. Every renter smoked inside. Every renter left the house trashed. I can't count how many hours I spent just scrubbing the walls of smoke phlegm, as I call it. Let alone how many weekends I spent doing nothing but cleaning it. In the summer. Without AC. Come on. Guys. I know the house isn't yours, but please still treat it with respect. That is somebody else's house. My brother Airbnb his apartment in Dublin City. Guest rang asking if they could leave early. Not the first, a lot of people need to leave early to catch a flight or something. We thought nothing of it. Me, brother and dad all go in together intending to do other stuff in the city. Place was in a mess. Guests must have had a party. Gender reveal going of the pink and blue balloons. Clearly had far more people than are allowed. Most of the rubbish was in a pile next to the door. But there was confetti everywhere. The floor was super sticky. And there were catering boxes still half full of food in the sink. The worst part was that they lived about 10 minutes away and it was obvious that they only booked so they could have a party without having to clean up afterwards. Suffice to say that the rest of our plans were ruined. But we found a full bottle of cheap gin. As a guest. I've had one owner who lingered the entire weekend and then we found out he was sleeping in a hammock in the yard of his luxury home we were renting. I've also had an owner who checked in twice a day by ringing the doorbell and disrupting what was supposed to be a relaxing business trip. If you're young and not dressed like a total nerd while renting something high-end, they all assume you're shooting porn. I had a renter that booked my place on a big holiday during festival season in my city. So the rate was much higher than usual. Instead of cancelling, the renter called Airbnb and said they didn't feel safe because when they got to the house there was fighting and drug use in my front yard. This is very unusual, so I checked the cameras and not only was that not the case, the renter never even showed up. I let Airbnb know and they said sometimes people do this because they want a refund and miss the cancellation window, and if I didn't give a refund they would likely leave me a bad review. I end up refunding the money and lost the whole weekend worth of income, which was 3x the normal rate. Not me but my stepdad. So this guy came to stay here for a month from England, which we're fine with. But then for half the month he didn't pay and he smoked a shit ton of weed. And I mean it. Like he was in a cottage behind the house. We rent that out for longer staying guests, and I could smell it in my bedroom. Keeping in mind that my bedroom is on the second story of my house on the complete opposite side of the cottage. So I cannot imagine how hard it must have been for my parents to clean that cottage. Well, honestly, the list is endless. My home is known for partying as I live in a town popular for spring breakers. I'll just make a few points for the horrors I so seen in my house. Sorry for format using mobile hookers. Multiple times in my house. The same hookers every time. I see them butt naked on my security cameras. I'm starting to think they know our house pretty well now. A trash can full of literal fesses. Don't know why or how, but it smelled great. A rotting diaper hidden outside in the sun. Not sure how long it's been there, but judging by the smell I'd say a week. I've had multiple guests lie to get a refund, and one particular guest made up a lie that their infant was chewing on dirty underwear they found under a chair. When I went to clean their room I found no such thing and they got a full refund for no reason. Puke? Please flush. A whole entire toenail buried in the bedsheets. Multiple occurrences of people pooping or peeing the bed. Cleaning up after yourself can go a long way and make your leaning lady's day a lot better. I stayed in on for a long time stay. I needed a place to stay for a month while I was waiting for my apartment to become available. Anyway, the owner was super nice and changed our bedding, vacuumed, and changed all the bathroom stuff like towels weekly, plus cleaned the bathroom. I asked her why she did all that and she told me, it's not just for us. She's had some pretty bad guests. Apparently one guy jerked off in the bed so much while he was there that by the time he left, the mattress was rotting and had to be replaced. After being told that, I understood why there were so many trivial rules in the posting. To protect her from anything that may happen. Sometimes Asians waffle stomp the shower. Usually happens in the summer during peak tourist season. They take a shit in the shower and then stomp it down the drain. This is usually accompanied by what appears to be a woman sitting on the ledge of the bathtub and peeing into the tub. It has to be a woman, because when guys piss in the tub it actually goes into the tub, not splattered on the side and dribbling down the edge. Our family has hosted about 9,000 guests over the last few years and I've got stories for days. But waffle stomping really pisses me off. Why would they instead of using the toilet? Not a horror story. My wife and I just got back from our normal Air B&b stay in Topsail, NC. We only stay in this host's houses. It's always stupid clean and he provides all these extras in case you forget stuff. Sadly he told us last week that he might be moving, so if he does he won't do Air B&b anymore since he's moving out of state. We have always given 5 stars to this host as well as he always gives us glorious reviews. We always pick up after ourselves and even take the garbage out for him. Even though he always tells us we don't have to. I will miss that host if he does move and accept his new job with the military. They destroyed and lost the majority of my grandma's collection. My grandparents rent out an apartment in Spain for people to use. It's normal for family or family friends only. But we let some friends of a friend stay there. My grandma has extreme OCD. To the point where she has color matched every item of clothing she has. She has 2 separate walk-in closets and she will bleach the floors every night despite her back pain. This being said, she's also a collector and one thing she loves is hats. In the apartment one of the decorations is a wall of sun hats. She's collected them from all over the world. Spain, Italy, America, Germany, Asia, you name it. She's probably got it. These hats are for decoration only. She always reminds us that these are not to be taken out of the house. You can wear them inside but no taking them to the beach. The friend of friend decided to wear different hats every day, giving her kids some hats too. They were lost in the ocean, destroyed with chlorine or filled with sand as makeshift buckets. The ones that didn't go missing were unfixable -1 or 2 that weren't used. My grandma was mortified. She sobbed for ages trying to repair the broken ones. She's starting to regain her collection, but she keeps it in her home in England now and she lets me wear them sometimes, but no one can even touch the two that survived from Spain. We don't talk to those people anymore. Not me. But my aunt rented out part of her house with Air B&b. One of her tenants was an avid cyclist and had used the washing machine to wash his lycra cycling clothes, which he then decided to suspend on a coat hanger from the balcony light. Needless to say, not a great idea. My aunt, minding her business, notices the smell of burning rubber, knocks on his door. He exclaims how happy to see her. Some rapscallion flicked their cigarette butt all the way from street level to the balcony, landing on and lighting his lycra pants on fire. They melted and pooled all over her balcony. She ended up not worrying too much about it, just cleaning up the mess. But you can still see the stain on the wood. Reverse story. We were the guests and it was our hosts who were weird. My partner and I stayed at our first Airbnb a few years ago and things were fine until the second of 3 nights, when the hosts had friends over who were smoking weed and being super annoying and loud, really making things uncomfortable for 2 fairly straight-laced people. The third day we went out for breakfast and came back to the next guests just sitting in the living room, hanging out. 4 hours before they were supposed to check in. We did not feel comfortable leaving our stuff there for those few hours, so we trudged around the city with all of our bags. Not the best first experience. The sketchy guest decided that the house was his and wouldn't leave. Not me but my dad. The guest decided he wanted to stay for a month or so for just a little cheaper than the Airbnb price, so my dad was fine with that. But they ended up not using the app since the guy wanted to just pay cash. Already a red flag. The guy continued to ask for an extension, which my dad allowed. But eventually my dad needed the house again and so he denied the guy's request for an extension. The guy wasn't too happy about this, so he decided that the house was his and he wasn't going anywhere. Long story short, the guy ended up smashing one of the TVs with a baseball bat and someone ended up falling off the tall balcony. The guy was super shady. He was rich, only paid in cash, was always wearing a suit but never really left the house, and lots of random people were always coming in and out of the house. My dad and some of his intimidating looking friends showed up and scared them away, and luckily haven't seen or heard from the guy since.